Let's talk about the Chicago Bears draft now, which it was a very fascinating draft. So first draft in the Ben Johnson era, and it comes from the Lions, who they do things very differently over there in Detroit, and I think he definitely lived up to the billing and again, it's not just him, right? There's a whole front office and everything, but they definitely lived up to the billing of being a little bit different. And what you see next to me is, so the first number is where the player was picked, then the player name, the player position, and finally where they were projected to go via the consensus big board. Colston Loveland, usually you don't get that much of, I feel like, attention when a position is, when you pick a guy who's only projected to go 5 picks later, right? So it's not like it was a crazy pick there or anything, although some people didn't have him at top 15. Usually tight ends kind of don't go that early, so I think a lot of people thought maybe like in the early 20s. I saw like the Chargers, who have an early 20s pick, that was getting mocked a lot, but no, at 10, and also I think just Tyler Warren still being on the board. Many people loved Tyler Warren. Personally, I don't think it's that crazy to go with Loveland over Warren. I do think Loveland is the more complete route runner, and, for Ben Johnson, that's what he values, is he values route running. So I actually think Loveland fits that scheme a little bit better, and there's some talk about, is this being a potential Sam Laporta move? Remember, Sam Laporta was not the next tight end that was supposed to go. It was Dalton Kincaid and Michael Mayer as the top 2. Kincaid went off the board, so everyone thought, okay, Mayer, and then the Lions decided not to go with Mayer and got Sam Laporta instead. Worked out pretty well. Again, and I think Mayer's a fine player in his own right, but, that worked out pretty well. Is Loveland going to be able to be Sam Laporta? Well, remains to be seen. Very good player, though, a player I like a lot and should help out this situation. Luther Burden III was the next player selected, and I find this interesting, the fact that really the top 2 picks, again, in the draft to try and, or I guess in the offseason to help out Caleb Williams, despite the fact that on paper there was some good receivers with Rome Odunze, there, of course, DJ Moore, who for some reason I blanked on his name, but yes, DJ Moore, another guy who, that's pretty good, but ultimately they wanted to still add more, and I think Luther Burden, again, could he be the Amon-Ra St. Brown of this draft? I don't think it's crazy. I really don't. I think he's a really good player and should fit that scheme perfectly. They then went with Ozzy Trapolo, who, okay, we're getting into, I think again, another quote-unquote reach, right? Was projected to go 85th, went 56. So that's a pretty big jump. That's almost, a full round of picks at this point. Not quite, but close to a full round of picks. Why did they want Trapolo? Well, who is he? So he's an offensive lineman who a lot of people just feel like maybe doesn't quite have the strength to fully work as a starting tackle, probably is just a backup, but he can play left or right tackle. You look at the Chicago Bears, and while they probably would be able to withstand an interior injury, if they have an offensive tackle get injured, they could be in trouble. And so I think the logic here is he can play left or right. If someone gets hurt, we can hopefully just have someone come in and be fine. Maybe not great, but not a disaster there, because Caleb Williams obviously holds on to the ball too long, took all the sacks, all that stuff. So having a situation like this where you can just give him more time to hold on to the ball, even if there's an injury, I think that's why they went here. Is it a reach? Maybe, but the goal is to get Caleb Williams in a better situation. This should do that. They then drafted Shamar Turner, an interior defensive lineman, a pick that I'm not fully sure I get here. Again, it's another bit of a reach, projected to go before Trapolo, but still projected to go about 20 picks later. 300-pound interior defensive lineman who the analytics are not great. They're not very good with him, so I don't know exactly what they see with him. I think maybe they do like that he is sort of built as a high motor player, but ultimately isn't a great run defender, and I'm not sure I fully grasp it. It's not to say he should be horrible, but I think that maybe he is someone that they are hoping to develop into being more than what he currently is. I'm sure they see something on film, maybe some technique thing they feel like they can fix, but as of right now, I don't really know what the point is, which I'm not saying it's going to be wrong. I'm just saying they know more than me, but what I know, this is a bit curious. We then have the first player they drafted that was essentially 100 spots past when the draft ends, according to the consensus big board. Ruben Hippolyte the second. I'm not sure if I said his name right. Apologies if I did not. Off-ball linebacker. So, okay, that that's not ideal. What I just said right here, again, from Maryland, so not the largest, not the biggest school. Also 6 foot tall, 240 pounds, has some muscle there, right? That's definitely some weight on him. So maybe that's what they want, is just a player they feel like can be physical. You look at his sort of analytics across the board, which, okay, I did not do a deep dive on a top 400 prospects, so I kind of have to read what some other people say here. You look at some numbers, though, it seems like he's okay across the board. Just a bit of a weird pick here at pick 132. I'm not sure if it's a special teams thing or what. So again, some things that, sorry, I wish I could give an explanation for, but I just don't fully know if I get this. 169, I do get Zoff Rager, who, okay, so here's the thing about him is, well, for one thing, comes from a smaller school, but also only played around like 500 snaps like last year and played under 100 in the previous 2 years combined. So you're talking about a complete projection here. That being said, he was really good in those snaps and has really good speed while being 6'3", only 185 pounds. But like, he to me feels like someone who's intriguing. He was projected to go 130th. He goes 169. You should at the very least have a good special teams guy, but I think there is potential for more. So he's an interesting player for me. Then they drafted Luke Newman, a guard who, okay, he's projected to go into 350s as well, but doing some research on him prior to this video, I'm actually pretty intrigued by him. So he is someone who, you look at his analytics, again, like, things like sort of the offensive equivalent of the pass rush win rate and things like that. Last year, they weren't great. Although they weren't a disaster last year, but like, you wouldn't be drafting a guy for what he did last year. However, in 2023, they were quite strong, and that's when he played left tackle. They moved him to guard, and he kind of somewhat struggled with that, although I would say he also didn't allow a sack last year, for whatever that's worth. His pass block grade, if you like the PFF stuff, was pretty good last year. So you have some potential here. I find him an intriguing prospect. I don't know what else you really do with him, though. Again, feels like something where maybe you have some technique things you feel like you can fix. Maybe you just put him at tackle. He could be a backup there. Again, purely a depth piece, but a pretty compelling one, I would say. And then pick 223, Kyle Managogi. Sorry, I'm trying my best here. Some of these names are hard. I do my best. Kyle M here, though. But he was someone who, again, I think that he'll probably play some special teams at 223. There is the question. So he was a very physical running back. There is some questions of how well will that work at the next level, especially when you're 5'9", 210 pounds. Not that that's, the 210 pounds is okay, but the 5'9", definitely on the smaller side. It would work if you're a speed guy, but that's not really his game. So not exactly sure if that's going to amount to anything more than maybe special teams. But hey, maybe they just want to add some physicality to the, to the locker room, which isn't the worst thing in the world. So ultimately, yeah, a curious draft. I think they got a couple really good players. I think they got a player who should at least, help out Caleb Williams in the third round with Ozzy Trapolo, and then a lot of kind of head scratchers, to be honest. So if you're a Bears fan or just, a fan of football in general watching this, let me know if you think I'm missing something on some of these players, because there are some picks I like, a lot of guys who maybe have potential, but also some confusing ones. So yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. But those